Visible expectancy for Somalia election war 2026. The political landscape of Somalia has long been characterized by instability, clan politics, and the persistent threat of violent extremism. As the nation tentatively charts a course toward more stable governance, the upcoming indirect elections scheduled for 2026 cast a long shadow of both hope and apprehension. The visible expectancy surrounding these elections is complex, encompassing widespread domestic desire for legitimate representation, international pressure for democratic consolidation, and, critically, the ever-present fear that underlying tensions could erupt into renewed conflict, effectively becoming an election war. Understanding this dynamic requires examining the structural fragilities within the Somali state, the role of regional powers, and the efficacy of the current indirect electoral model. Somalia's recent history is a testament to the catastrophic consequences of contested power. The last major electoral cycle, characterized by the indirect selection process implemented due to security concerns, demonstrated the deep fissures that remain unhealed. While the federal government of Somalia, FGS, under President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud has made strides in centralizing authority and engaging in security operations against al-Shabaab, the trust deficit between the central government and federal member states, FMS, remains palpable. The 2026 elections, even if proceeding under a modified, yet still indirect, formula, will test the limits of the current political agreement. Visible expectancy here manifests as an intense focus on whether this transition will finally deliver a genuine mandate reflective of the populace, or merely perpetuate elite bargaining that marginalizes larger segments of society. A primary source of potential conflict stems from the clan-based nature of Somali politics. Political power sharing is frequently negotiated along clan lines, creating a zero-sum game where political losses are often perceived as existential threats by the losing groups. The structure of the National Consultative Council, NCC, which oversees electoral processes, is a constant point of friction. Disagreements over the mechanism of selecting delegates, the composition of the electoral bodies, and the criteria for presidential candidates can rapidly escalate from political disputes into armed standoffs, particularly in regions where local militias or FMS forces hold sway. The memory of near breakdowns during previous voting periods serves as a constant reminder that the threshold between political maneuvering and armed confrontation is frighteningly low in Somalia. Furthermore, the involvement of external actors amplifies the stakes for the 2026 elections. Regional neighbors such as Ethiopia, Kenya, and Djibouti hold vested security and economic interests in the outcome of Somali governance. Their influence, often channeled through support for specific FMS leaders or direct security engagements, can either stabilize or destabilize the delicate balance of power. The expectation is that these external players will seek to ensure a favorable outcome, potentially leveraging military or financial resources. This external interference breeds deep suspicion among nationalists who view any perceived manipulation as an infringement on sovereignty, fueling nationalist sentiment that can easily be weaponized by opposition figures or extremist groups. The security situation remains the most immediate predictor of electoral success or failure. Al-Shabaab actively seeks to disrupt any political process perceived as legitimate by the international community or the FGS, viewing stable elections as a direct challenge to its ideological claim to governance. The group's capability to execute high-profile attacks during the election period, targeting polling sites, political figures, or key infrastructure, is a constant and visible threat. If security deteriorates significantly in the lead-up to 2026, the justification for continued reliance on an indirect, elite-driven process will strengthen, while simultaneously infuriating the public who crave a direct vote and accountability. A failure to demonstrably degrade al-Shabaab's operational capacity before the elections will undermine public confidence in the FGS's ability to guarantee a safe political environment. The international community, led by the United Nations Assistance Mission in Somalia, UNSOM, and various donor nations, is heavily invested in seeing Somalia transition to direct, one-person, one-vote elections, a goal postponed multiple times. The visible expectation from this quarter is adherence to a strict timeline and a credible process that moves beyond the 4-5 clan power-sharing formula. However, the capacity of international partners to enforce timelines against the internal resistance of entrenched Somali elites is limited. If the political environment fractures severely, the pragmatic response might be another modified indirect election, leading to widespread disillusionment among the youth and a renewed sense of hopelessness that might drive recruitment for radical elements. In conclusion, the visible expectancy for the 2026 Somali elections is dominated by a tug-of-war between necessary political progress and persistent structural risk. There is a tangible hope that the next cycle could solidify fragile democratic gains, providing Somalia with the stable leadership required to tackle endemic issues like poverty and terrorism. Yet, this hope is heavily tempered by the predictable friction points, unresolved clan power dynamics, the interventionist tendencies of neighboring states, and the ever-present security vacuum exploited by al-Shabaab. For 2026 to be a milestone and not merely another prelude to crisis, Somali leaders must prioritize genuine political reconciliation over short-term factional gains. The world watches, expecting a transition that fulfills democratic aspirations, while simultaneously preparing for the possibility that the inherent tensions of the Somali system may yet ignite another cycle of conflict rather than peaceful consensus.